Hello everybody and welcome to Climate Change Day 5. Today we are going to take our every 5th day break from our normal schedule in class to do our journal club. So come on along and we'll talk a little bit about how that's going to work. So our quote from today comes from the Anglican Bishop of Johannesburg, South Africa, or former Bishop of Johannesburg, South Africa, Desmond Tutu, who said, 25 years ago, people could be excused for not knowing much or doing much about climate change. Today, we have no excuse. By the end of today, you will be able to explain how artificial production of carbon dioxide impacts temperature. And so, let's talk a little bit about how this journal club is going to work. Just like you've been writing lab reports for a couple of years in your science classes, actual scientific reports that come out as the result of scientific studies get published in a very similar format. So you're going to get an article, and the older ones that we're going to read are not necessarily going to be broken down into an intro, methods, results, and discussion section like the ones you've written, but as we move forward in time, we're going to find that that is going to become a more common form. So the article you're going to read this time, being from 1938, is a little bit preceding that as being standard, but you are still going to see that in the order of events that you are going to read, they're going to kind of come along in that pattern. We're doing this because this is one of the best ways to learn about how we actually know what we know about the world. And so we're going to read these articles that were researched, written, peer-reviewed, and published. And the articles we're going to read in here were determined by members of the IPCC to be some of the most influential papers on climate change. So for our next class, you should read the article from Calendar from 1938, and while you read it, you should highlight, annotate, take notes, write down questions, and pay attention to the figures and topics that the paper talks about and be ready to discuss them in class. You should all expect to be able to answer questions that your classmates have, as well as ask questions of your own. None of us should be able to get through this article and not have outstanding questions left over. So, normally, you guys are going to lead the discussion, but for the first one as an example, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of what you can expect when we have our discussion time. So, when we have our discussion, we're going to talk about the artificial production of carbon dioxide and its influence on temperature. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to look at the figures and tables together, and we're going to analyze what they mean and what the impacts of them will be. We're also going to take a look at some of the quotes from here that I thought were some of the most influential or interesting pieces of the paper. And then throughout this process, it will be your opportunity to ask questions and answer each other's questions. And so that's pretty much the whole plan. And there is so much packed into this paper that I fully believe that we'll take the whole class period to talk about. And that's okay, because this really is where we're starting to see the actual understanding of climate change start to take shape. It wasn't the beginning of it, which you learned in class 4, but this is where we are starting to see the beginning. Make sure you do your reading. Make sure you ask questions. Make sure you write your questions down beforehand so you don't forget to ask them. And if you do that, we're all going to learn a lot, and we're going to have a good experience in our first journal class together.